So, you ready for the fiasco?
I'm not ready.
No. Uh, let's skip the stupid recap. We already know, right? We already know all about
Yeah.
this. So the funny part,
Hmm.
not the funny part, honestly. I there's some things about this that just made me think about everything in general, and that's the fact that
Hmm.
what Tolkien wrote was high-end saga. You can't do a representation of Tolkien's world and make it fit of the world of today because it was never meant to, and it was never meant to reflect. It wasn't an allegory. It wasn't supposed to reflect our times. It was always meant to reflect high-end saga and values that existed outside of our present era. So that's the problem with this show because it's trying to represent the world we live in today in a world that was meant to be high-end saga with values that don't even correlate in any sense of it, you know? Um, because
Hmm.
because the whole point of Middle Earth as a whole and the elves and the place of the elves in it is that they're trying to avoid decay. They're trying to, it goes back to that concept of eternity. They're trying to avoid decay. They're trying to preserve.
Yeah. Okay.
They're,
There.
they're trying to preserve something that ultimately cannot be preserved because the world is made to decay. Um, there's also a very clear indication, both in this and I'm getting a little bit out of just the storytelling in both Rings of Power and even as a reflection of what Tolkien wrote, even in Tolkien's original writing, and in what George Martin is doing with the Song of Ice and Fire. These worlds and these characters reflect beliefs that belong to a group of people that are elitist. To not get into anything too crazy, right? You have in both worlds you have
It is.
yeah in both worlds you have a divine race, right? With Tolkien, you have the elves, which are a sort of
Okay. Yeah.
you have the elves, which are a sort of divine race that comes here from another world, right? Valinor, and even outside of Valinor, the Valar had come from outside of the world into the world. But let's just stick with the elves. The elves come from Valinor to Middle Earth, right, which is where humans dwell, and the Targaryens come
Mm-hmm.
from Valyria into Westeros and Essos, but Westeros essentially. So it's a concept that runs deep in that elitist belief system that they are a divine race that came to the earth, gifting us with civilization, but they fail to show their own that they have a narcissistic and satanic vein to them. The whole point of these shows and these books and why they in these novels and why they even got published in the first place is because they represent a satanic cultist elitism that they are wanting us to praise. They are wanting us to worship in a sense. Um, and it
Oh,
doesn't
is that what they want us to do, though?
That's what they want us to do. I mean, essentially, we are rooting for the Targaryens. We are rooting for the elves. We are rooting for a sense of eternity. It's kind of like the Raiden Shogun complex, where they want to preserve the concept that existed prior to Christianity, which was that you had to worship them as gods. I mean, you were the one that told me that the belief system of the Targaryens was not even the belief system of the Seven, but that they kind of saw themselves as gods. A gentleman called John Todd and the Necronomicon. And I believe that that's really where all these stories come from. I don't believe that Tolkien really came up with it originally. and I don't believe anymore. I certainly don't believe George Martin did. I think they are working off of these tales that have been preserved in what secretly is called the Necronomicon that John Todd talked about, because John Todd actually was the first one to talk about it in the 70s. By that point in time, Song of Ice and Fire didn't exist, but Lord of the Rings did definitely exist. And he said that he came from that family in Scotland that was part of that elitism and had that belief and called themselves witches and wizards, and who also that book, Lord of the Rings, was the book that they got to read as children the way that Christian kids read the Bible. So if I'm to believe this man, he passed away. We don't know really what happened to him. This was 20 years ago. Excuse me, 50 years ago almost. Let's say about 40 years ago. Um, he already had claimed this. I'm not making it up. I'm not saying it.
Damn.
I'm not the one making this up. I'm not coming up with this. This is something that I saw this man. He did interviews in the late 70s before he disappeared, where he talked about all these things. And now that I'm watching both shows next to each other, you really start to see that correlation. So that's the first thing I wanted to start with, conspiracy theory, because it's interesting and because it's
Yeah, no, it makes sense. There's a lot of similarities because they come from the same thing.
Yes. So we have, and the reason I thought about it is because we have this opening. They try to do a gotcha on us.
Tulil menoritas Heru Sauron.
All right. So they try to bait us into thinking that the stranger is Sauron. But everybody that has been commenting on this was correct, we're going to find out that Halbrand is Sauron. Now, the reason I didn't think Halbrand would be Sauron, I realize now at the end of this fiasco, is that I'm actually...
Well, that was kind of obvious. He was there for no reason.
Right, but I'm saying that it was obvious if you don't listen, if you don't pay attention to the lore. From the perspective of the lore, it's really hard to pinpoint. Like, it doesn't make sense that Halbrand would even be Sauron. It doesn't make sense how he appears or any of that. I almost would want the stranger to be Sauron because of the ways he appears would be more conducive to what Sauron would be than the way Halbrand does. Nonetheless, the reason I had that difficulty is because I'm actually trying to stupidly follow the lore like a moron, and these people do whatever they want with this, and if you just watch what they actually put together, it's obvious that Halbrand is going to be Sauron. But if you're trying to take it from the perspective of the lore, it makes it very difficult to make that assessment because it wouldn't fit in any kind of way, if that makes sense. Again, Galadriel shows up all of a sudden in Eregion. When we left her, she was in Mordor. Now she's in Eregion. That is not, like a one-day trip. But all of a sudden, she appears with Halbrand, who remember he was about to die, but no, somehow he rode the whole way with her. But we have no sense of time, no sense of distance. Something that Tolkien was always very specific about in his geography all the time. It was very important. There should be a showdown in Eregion happening over the rings with Sauron, but we won't get that this episode. So that's kind of a bummer. The reality of the story at this point would be that Sauron was involved with the rings, the forming of the rings, and he would have an army of men and orcs available to him, so that when the elves kind of catch on to the fact that it is Sauron and that he has bad intentions, he's able to attack them in Eregion and force them into siege, backing out into what becomes Rivendell. But we're not going to see any of that. We have a typical Galadriel moment where Elrond basically, remember the last time Elrond saw her, she was episode 1, when she was going to go to she was supposed to go to Valinor on the ship, and then she jumped off the ship. He has had no idea in all this time that she is here. So he asks her basically that question, right? And in typical Galadriel fashion, instead of answering the question, she always has to shoot back.
King of the Southlands, how is it your path crossed with his? How is it you are here?
How is it you are here?
What is that supposed to even be? Like, how is it you are here? I don't know. How are you supposed to be here? So now we're back to like, oh man, obnoxious Galadriel.
I hate her so much.
Of course, Elrond.
I hate her so much. Like, she makes no sense. She's so condescending for no reason.
Exactly. And then of course Elrond apologizes to her right away because, that's his place in relation to her.
The only thing we can do.
The only thing we can do, right, is
Swim.
is swim. I love these metaphors. The only thing we can do, because remember she jumped into the ocean. The only thing you can do facing adversity is swim. Isn't that awesome? Apparently,
Oh my god.
apparently we never remember. She said Halbrand needed.
This is so dumb. Like, they think they're making this clever. I don't know.
Halbrand needed Elvish medicine, but now he gets up like nothing. He's just walking around, looking for Galadriel, and we get our first little sneak peek into the actual gemstones that are going to go into the 3 Elvish rings. That's cute. That's cool. We like that. Why not? It's about time. We should have had this like episode 2, but we have it now.
These gemstones, I've never seen anything like them.
So, they represent the 3 elven rings that are going to be made by the end of this episode. They don't tell us anything about the 1 ring, which in any case, we'll talk about that at the end. Remind me, but what about the 7 dwarf rings? What about the 9 rings for men? There's no discussion of it. You're gonna see how they force Halbrand, now aka Sauron, into being involved in the formation of the rings. It is hilarious that he just walks into Celebrimbor's work area, and Celebrimbor would even accept a human, first of all, to just show up there, second of all, to take his advice, because Halbrand basically tries to tell him how to make how to forge. The whole concept in this story is that the mithril has some kind of amazing energy and is needed to be able to forge some kind of a talisman that then the elves will use against Sauron or against whatever this evil is, because again, it's unclear why the tree is dying, and they're debating on what that talisman is going to be. Now that's okay, but why anybody would listen to Halbrand, and why Halbrand would be telling an expert like Celebrimbor? Yes, well, that's another good point. I forgot about that. It's true. Celebrimbor never trusted Sauron in the first place.
This dude is literally nobody. I don't understand that.
Yeah, he's nobody. There's no reason why Celebrimbor should be having a discussion with him about how to forge this. Nor does it make any sense what he's even saying. The whole concept here doesn't make sense. Look, the point of the talismans, and which become the rings of power, is the fact that they are imbued with spirit. They are imbued with the energy of the creator. Not that they have mithril, or that mithril has some energy from the light of the Silmaril. It's not what was meant to be. The whole point of why the 1 ring to rule them all even has that power is because it's imbued with Sauron's own power as a Maiar, and he imbues his life essence into it. It's a little bit more spiritual, I suppose, than just trying to tell me that Mithril has some kind of light element that is necessary to be conjoined with um, you're gonna see later gold and silver from Valinor. No one ever talks about gold and
This
silver.
just go back to you talking earlier about taking out the spirituality off of these. I said it's just confirmation that they're trying to take the spirituality idea out of this.
Yes, yes, and make it into, but then coming up with nonsensical science to try to explain. He's talking about amplifying the power. I mean, none of it makes any sense. Okay, I'm not going to get into how stupid it is. I just wanted to kind of the main thing in all of this is that no one look. If Sauron is trying to coerce them into making the rings at this point, that's not what they're even showing. They already want to make the rings, and they're basically showing that Sauron has better understanding of how to make talismans and smithing than the elves themselves. Which at this point we know he's Sauron, but Celebrimbor thinks he's a human. He wouldn't listen to him. He wouldn't have this discussion. Anyway, there's this. From that we cut to this loser Pharazôn, and I want to tell you something about Pharazôn because I was reading up. I was looking at the peoples of Middle Earth to read the New Shadow, and there's a lot on there on the timeline of the Second Age, and there's a lot of talk about this guy Pharazôn. Okay, and I want to ask your opinion.
Him the immortality
Do you
so.
do you think this guy's handsome? And I don't. I'm not trying to insult the actor. I mean the way they present him with the hair and the beard.
I mean, I think he is.
Okay. I think the beard makes him look older than he is. He is very much like a Targaryen. He would have been like an Aegon Targaryen. Like literally, he's an Aegon Targaryen. He
The beard.
he was handsome, he was
He
strong.
doesn't look like a Targaryen then. Like, no.
He was
Hell no.
he was proud, and it
Like,
was interesting.
that's-
And it's interesting because him and Miriel have an actual, like Miriel actually was attracted to him. Miriel actually gave up her kingship to him because she was in love with him because he was so hot, he was so handsome, he was so powerful, and that he was actually good friends with Elendil's father, which I didn't even think about Elendil's father, Valendil, and he actually is very important in all of this, but obviously he's not in the show, like many other things. And Valendil was close friends of Pharazôn, and that's important because it's like these two guys that were good friends as kids, and then they grow apart as they grow up. Like you already have that information available to you to create and generate these characters, and you're not even doing it. But not only that, like if Pharazôn was meant to be this strong, handsome personality, remember way back like in episode 2 or 3, he was like crouching from Galadriel and holding a sword, like stay away from me, don't hurt me. That guy would have like chopped her down to size. We get a crummy politician looking guy versus a very powerful warrior knight type of guy, a Targaryen that would have stepped up and said, you know, it's my turn to take the kingship. So they really dropped the ball on that one because I hadn't even read up.
This person very much looks like a diplomatic kind of person, like a politician, very much not a warrior.
Exactly. And the whole point of this particular scene right now here is to show how what needs to develop with Pharazôn, whether they're going to show it or not, what needs to develop with Pharazôn is that he is obsessed with immortality, right? The whole drama of the Númenóreans is that Elros was the brother of Elrond. They're both half elves. One chose to live as an elf, to have the doom of elves, and one chose to have the gift of men. And the gift of men is the ability to die and pass from the world. And so Elros and his descendants and the Númenóreans as a whole become increasingly obsessed with the fact that even though in the beginning they can live up to 300 years, they're slowly losing their ability to live longer. They're dying sooner. And they are like, why do the elves get to live forever and we don't? And that obsession is what drives them ultimately to compete and challenge the Valar themselves, and ends to the scene that we saw that they sneak peeked us of, Numenor being flooded, the deluge, as it were. So, I mean, I never really related to that concept in the sense I'm not a person that cares for immortality. I agree with Tolkien's perspective, which is the world is already a piece of crap as it is, and if you can escape it through fantasy into a world that has more meaning to you, why not? The king is dying. Remember this chick? She's there. She always happens to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. For some reason, they made up this thing where everybody's trying to take a picture, draw up a portrait of him before he dies. For the I don't know, the memorial that they're going to make for him. He thinks that's his daughter Muriel, and he basically says, you got to look into the Palantir. Remember, the Palantir got introduced a couple episodes back to see what's going to come in the future, and that's it. They drop her here. We don't see her again. I suppose she's going to see something.
Wait, again?
Yeah, they drop.
That's just how it happened in Hot D already?
Exactly. She goes to the room. She sees the Palantir. We don't know what happens from there with her, but we're assuming that she's gonna see the truth, and I don't know what that's gonna mean. But that's what she gets for her. The end of the end of the season. They're talking about making a talisman. They're saying maybe it needs to be a circular object because of the concept of recycling, how when things move in circles, it just re-energizes itself, which is a true concept. And so they want it to be a crown.
Oh god.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
They're talking
okay.
about making it into a crown. But what I find interesting here is that the only person that seems to be concerned with the abuse, like if they make this powerful talisman, the only one that seems to be concerned with the abuse of it is Gil-galad, the king. They don't care. They're like, it's like basically, let's say they're making a nuclear bomb, and the only one that's saying, wait a minute, what if the enemy gets a hold of the nuclear bomb? Is Gil-galad. Nobody else is questioning the fact that maybe we shouldn't even make a nuclear bomb. Why are we making the nuclear bomb? Oh, because if we make the nuclear bomb, supposedly we're gonna scare Putin off. It feels like Putin. Sauron is Putin in this all of a sudden. So there's a fake there's this fake correlation between Mount Doom and this tree that, again, I don't know what tree it is. If it's supposed to be another one of the trees of Valinor, my understanding is that Lyndon didn't have a tree. Lyndon did not have one of the trees from Valinor. It was Nimloth, the tree that's in Numenor, and from that it was brought to Minas Tirith eventually, but not Lyndon. But nonetheless, they have a tree, and the tree is rotting because Mount Doom erupted. Remember, it was already rotting before Mount Doom erupted, so it doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't exist, but that's what they do. And then on top of all of this, right, he says, okay, well, you guys want to make a nuclear bomb, fine, but you know what? There's no more time. And it's like, what do you mean? There's no sense of time in the show. And all of a sudden he's like, no, there's no more time to make this. You guys waited too long. There's no more time to make it happen. It's over. And then they're like, well, give me 3 more weeks. Elrond says, give me 3 more weeks. So now all of a sudden, what you couldn't accomplish in months, you're going to do in 3 weeks. And then this is where
what is wrong with these people?
Yeah, this is where they bring
A sword?
Or perhaps a crown. But the key...
This is where they bring Halbrand in again. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Celebrimbor mentions the fact that these talismans are going to have power over the flesh, and Galadriel suddenly perks up and says,
that unlock the dam. We are on the cusp of crafting a new kind of power, not of strength, but of spirit, not of the flesh, but over flesh. This is a power of the unseen world.
suddenly Galadriel is making connections that, wait a minute, what you're saying sounds like Sauron. Who did you hear that from? Like, wow, there was nothing to lead us up to that point, but now all of a sudden we're making connections. And here's another funny thing. Gil-galad says,
Are you Sauron? I think that's
yeah.
literally the
Gil-galad says,
the
well, let's evacuate the
summary
city.
you can have
Why would you
of
evacuate a whole...
freaking Galadriel?
Yeah.
Are you Sauron?
Why would you evacuate a whole city over this? That doesn't make any sense. There's no immediate threat. There's no reason. Eregion is an established city of elves. Why would the Elf King order them to abandon Eregion? Number one, it didn't happen. But number two, it doesn't even make any sense from the story standpoint. So already this entire council has been ridiculous. We went with nothing happening, and now they're trying to make everything happen in the last episode as far as these rings getting made, right? Because basically they need at least the 3 elven rings to be made by the end of the episode. It is a fact that the elven rings were made without the power of Sauron. Sauron did not have power over them, but the rings were still susceptible to being I don't know, if exposing them. If you put on the ring and you used it, Sauron would be aware of you. So that's why they went to Rivendell. Elrond has one and goes to Rivendell. Galadriel has one and she goes to Lothlorien, and Gil-galad has the one in Lindon until
I remember.
Another thing that I can't stand about the show is how they think that playing up to people's sense of being good is a way to convince them to do anything, as if anybody. I hate to be cynical about it, but it wouldn't have worked with the elves, and it doesn't work with them, right? It's very clear the elves have a particular agenda. Like I said, in the lore, their agenda is to preserve eternity. In this show, it's to save their own butts. But he gives them this stupid speech.
I ask you. It is a fool's hope, Elrond. Merely that, nothing more. Hope is never mere. Not even when it is meager.
Oh,
Or
wow.
have you forgotten your own counsel?
He's like, okay, you got me. So now I'm going to do whatever you say. Right. Remember, she was in Numenor and Elendil took her to their library and she was trying to find information on Halbrand, and she deduced, remember, private investigator Galadriel told us that Halbrand was descendant of kings. And now she's like, wait a minute. Can you go back to the library and find more information on Halbrand? And all of a sudden, this guy is going to find more information for her that Halbrand isn't a king, because the line of kings in the south, which we don't know anything about from Tolkien, ended like 1,000 years before Halbrand was even born. Why is she hiding from Celebrimbor and Elrond?
3 weeks for labor.
Why would she hide?
Centuries.
Why would she hide from them? They're not friends with Halbrand. The only person that has anything at stake with Halbrand is herself. She's the one that brought him over here. Nobody else gives a damn about Halbrand, so why hide? It makes no sense. She wanted to find Sauron at any cost. She didn't care if elven lives were at stake. And in the end, her own stupidity and her own hard-headedness, her stubbornness, led her to enable Sauron to get this far. Now that we know that Halbrand is Sauron, she actually helped him along. If Galadriel had stopped, if she had gone to Valinor in the first episode, none of this would have happened. Sauron would never have gotten this far. So she's actually like an access to evil by her own stupidity. Another thing that annoys me on the show is the stupid accents. I don't understand how they came up with them. Let me see if I can get to it.
Plot twist: Galadriel is
Working with the
Sauron.
elves.
Yeah.
Galadriel was Sauron all along, and
More your powers awaken,
What's with these
the
accents?
more the veil will weaken.
Veil.
The one placed upon your mind by those who cast you down. But we have come here.
These fire spirits are the best characters. They are the most consistent.
why?
They actually are basically religious people who follow Sauron and are trying to find their promised leader and are faithfully trying to help him out, but they're so dumb that they confused this guy for Sauron. How that is the case, I don't know, because they needed it to happen. They needed this entire moment to happen. But in any case, they do mention something. They mention the land of Rune finally that lies to the
I
east.
heard people saying that they follow the quote unquote stranger because he was coming down off of a comet that was like fire, and that is supposed to be Sauron.
Look, I don't know where that comes from, but I will say that we do mention Hrun, which is the land to the east, and that means that, and they do finally reveal that he is an Istari. I do want to say that these characters, they're just trying to do the best for who they believe their leader is.
But remember the Romanian guy? He actually said that this episode confirms that he is Gandalf 100%.
You're fucking kidding me. No. You're fucking kidding me. How stupid can you be? That's impossible.
I'm not.
That's impossible unless they're making it up. He's going to the land of Hrun. The Blue Wizards went to the east. It's not Gandalf. It's not possible unless they're making it up. But in any case, we have these idiot hobbit people that want to get involved. They think, remember, they already got burned to death nearly the last time they got involved with these people, but now they want to be warriors and supposedly help him. He doesn't need any help. He's got his own powers. And thank God that in the process of this little fight that they have, they kill this freaking guy finally. So I want to give you the joy. I want to give you the joy of seeing him die because it's just.
Run!
All right, so the beloved British comedian dies. And I don't like. I think they thought it was cool. Remember in the last episode where this wizard slams his hand on the ground and it causes like an earthquake? That they thought that was cool, so they did it again. It's not cool. It's not impressive. I don't understand how they think it is. But here we have, I guess this is how he fights.
Yourself.
Now, if you look at that, it looks like the two girls died and just the one in the middle survived, right? No, apparently not. Not only that, we thought the old man died right away. Apparently he got hurt, but he still has energy to... Can we say that this fire spirit over here, the one with the staff, she's pretty awesome? The only character that has evoked any sense of actual magic is this fire spirit lady. Yeah. Nazgirls! Oh yes! I love it.
We're gonna call him if they.
No, they're Nazgirls. Corey beat you. He got a much. He beat you on the naming. You gave us Galadriel horse, and Chris Puff, and he's giving us Nazgirls. I like Nazgirls a lot. That's really cool. Sadok is apparently Sadok is still around, and then
Yeah.
so
there's
this
Stan.
okay, so this girl is all like she's all badass, right? This Nazgirl, they, them, and all of a sudden, right? She goes up. She's like, make him see the truth, right? We gotta let this guy see. And you're like, oh my god, she's so badass. Nothing can stop her except. So apparently, if you just throw a rock at her head, she that stops her. That's if you throw a rock, it stops her. Oh my god.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Anyway,
You two.
Nori, I'm gonna say a fine hit. Yeah, I'm gonna say I like Nori. I feel that, and I'm gonna explain it more later. But I like Nori because I feel that she's the closest this show comes to embodying the sense of innocence and wonder that is represents what children are and what is worth preserving and fighting for in the world, and also can motivate us to do what's right. I'm not going to say they do a good job with her, but I want to say that that's the closest we come to an actual Tolkien-ish character in the show. As a character, forget everything else. Forget whether she really could be a hobbit or any of that. Just the fact that she exists on the show is a saving grace. She tells them, you can be whatever you want. Just because they tell you that you're evil doesn't mean that's what you have to be, and that gives them the power of understanding that he's not Sauron just because they say he's Sauron. There's another cringe thing that he does say though from this that is just a bit too much.
By what you do.
I'm gonna show you. He gets up.
To Shadow I bid you return.
He is not Sauron.
Oh, can we say something? Remember, he couldn't talk. We have had no sense of progression on how he's able to pick up this language, but suddenly in this episode, he speaks fluently. So something happened. And he says this.
Oh, right. I've seen like
I'm good.
I'm good. And at least in Lord of the Rings, they gave us Gandalf saying, "Thou shalt not pass." And that was like a moment where you were like, yeah, No, they give us, "I'm good. I'm a good boy. I'm a good boy. Pinocchio." So I don't know, man. That was stupid. And then you're thinking he gets this staff and
Pinocchio.
he uses the staff. Okay, they're Nazgirls. He was right. They look like Nazgirls. It's not possible though because there's no rings. Take that, Tolkien. He uses the staff, and you're like, wow, he just got a staff. He really looks like a wizard now. And what happens to the staff? It just freaking... Oh, he's the Mothman, by the way. He turns them into moths. I don't understand. And the staff dissolves. So we're like, what the hell? You just barely got that thing. It was only good for one use. And then they give us this. I honestly didn't care for the old man. The old man finally dies, and he says, "Let me look at the sun one last time before I die." And as if on cue, the sun rises.
Honestly, I'm glad the old man died. Like, He was so. I honestly, I don't care for any of these Harfoots. They're all so evil. I'm happy that they die.
Yeah. There's a lame discussion after this. We go to Elendil and Muriel, who are traveling back to Numenor and are about to find out that the king died.
Fine.
And again, I am tired of I'm tired of the crybaby thing of like, if God was so bad, if God is so good, why do bad things happen? You know, he's crying about his son. Elendil's crying about the fact that doing this led to the death of his son. It says something about the show that we're rooting for the villains, exactly, including Sauron, which we'll get into later. But Elendil's crying about his son dying in a war that he endorsed. You're the one that told everybody to go to war for a reason that you believed in, but the moment your son dies at war, you want to cry bloody murder and blame it on Galadriel? Are you 5 years old? I don't understand the fucking reasoning. It's mind-boggling. And then she's like, you know, homeboy, have some. I'm saying, homeboy, have
As
some.
if it wasn't your exact fault, you dumb idiot.
Yeah, own up to your own decisions. Have some level of self-awareness, you know. But I guess that goes with the whole woke philosophy. The fact that Muriel ends up blind should be a big deal. It should say something about her. Is it reflective of the fact that she's so blind because she doesn't know what the heck she's doing? She doesn't see. It would be a good writing element if they actually developed it, but it's just thrown in there. They don't really give you a sense of like, okay, the blindness of this character correlates to the fact that she can't see.
No, they're too bad of writers to think this smart. You're just a writer at heart.
Well, let me tell you something. I already know what they're gonna do. The whole reason she's blind is because she's gonna use the Palantir now to see. Because she's blind, she's gonna rely on the Palantir to be able to see anything. That's what they're gonna set up for the next season. Never mind that Muriel never went blind. That's not a real thing. But again, why do I care about the lore when I'm dealing with this show? They talk about the Mithril not being apparently Mithril, which is an inanimate object, has feelings, because Celebrimbor suddenly wants to talk about the fact that it won't listen to him.
The Mithril is proud. It refuses every effort to bond it with lesser ores.
Tapping into the powers of the seen and unseen world seem to soften the boundaries between the two.
More Halbrand telling them what to do. Again, what I find interesting about all of this is that
What's that even mean?
it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. What I find interesting is that from the beginning of this season, right, Galadriel was always headstrong, right? She does what she wants to do. She doesn't care what anybody tells her to do. And now she knows that Halbrand is Sauron, and she does nothing. She's just there observe. Like, what happened to you? You've been consistently impulsive the entire season, and now all of a sudden, now you don't want to act on your suspicions? Now you want to hold back? Is it because you're in love with this character? I mean,
this is the moment you know it's Sauron, you don't want to do it.
Exactly. The moment she knows it's Sauron, she doesn't want to do it. And it would make sense if they had bothered to develop the relationship between them, the fact that there's an attraction between them, but they didn't really do that. They hinted at it. They didn't really develop it, and it doesn't land. Sauron's not supposed to touch the three. He's got his hands all over everything, and he's helping make them. Yes. Sauron did not.
Yeah,
Sauron,
honestly, I didn't even feel it.
The one time that Sauron shouldn't be involved in the making of the rings, he is involved in the making of the rings. Okay, cool. That's what we do.
Sorry.
we finally have a confrontation between her and him. She finally verifies, because apparently the library in Numenor didn't have accurate information, but the one here does. Why didn't she just go to Linden in the first place? Why did we even go to Numenor? Now that she verifies it, she's like, I want you to tell me who you are. He doesn't really answer right away. And he says something that makes no sense. He says the following.
And mine.
Tell me your name.
I have been awake since before the breaking of the first silence.
I guess that's their little silly way of saying, you know, I've been here since the beginning of creation. Everything that he says to her makes sense. I think honestly, what they wanted to do here is subvert the Sauron role and make him the anti-hero for us. I think they secretly, just like us now, right? We're rooting for the villains because they are purposely making the villains look heroic and making the so-called good people look like they are so obnoxious. But all his counter arguments to her are correct, right? Because she's like, I don't understand. I thought you were with me. And he's like, I never told you I was this. I actually was honest with you from the beginning. You're the one that deluded yourself. And he's completely 100% right.
In that side, I have had many names.
Okay, so at least finally we find someone that's Galadriel can't fight with one. Look at her face. She got her one-on-one fist fight with Sauron like she always wanted. Yup, not a great plan as it turns out. What was she ever gonna do? Is she found him from the beginning? Right.
I can't with this act.
She literally strikes at him and
I'm
he
sure
blocks.
she's a great person, but she really doesn't deliver at all.
So here's the retorts that he makes. They're important to. Oh, I kind of skipped them all already. Whatever. He puts her in this state where she's in a dream world and he's trying to pretend her be her brother. Like we've seen this in movies before. It wasn't very convincing. But then we get to this. Once she realizes it's not him.
Hunting Sauron.
My task is to ensure peace.
Once she realizes it's not him, he changes the scenery. He's bad at his job of convincing, but his arguments are very clear, and he's right. The problem that we have with him is his intentions, right? In other words, everything that Sauron is saying to her, he's right. The problem is that he's using proper logic for malicious intentions. The way we know the difference, and this is something that the show doesn't want to really say, right? But this is what Tolkien was saying, and it's a Christian point of view, is that the difference between evil and not evil, I don't want to say good, but the difference between evil and something being malintentioned is the concept of servitude versus mastery. Again, we go back to Samwise and Frodo. Why was Sam such a good character? Because he was always devoted to Frodo. Everything he did was out of a devotion of sacrifice to someone that he felt was an amazing person and that was trying to do an amazing thing and needed support. While Sauron is doing everything because he wants control. Morgoth does everything because he wants control. And that's why we don't like Galadriel, because she wants control. She has more in common with Sauron than she thinks, which he's right when he tells her that. When he tells her you have more in common with me than anybody else, he's 100% right. You know? And it plays out in this scene.
But I learned that was Sauron's task as well.
No. No, you died. Along with countless others because of him.
No, Galadriel.
Anyway, when she points out the fact that you're not my brother, he loses his crap and he switches the scenery. He,
Simply let the work proceed.
he's basically trying to say, I actually came to bring peace to the world, and I kind of like that they bring that factor into it, because that's actually gives us a great indication of the difference in Christianity, where the Son of Man says, I didn't come to bring peace in the world. I came to bring fire, a sword. I came to bring a sword and fire, something to that effect. So bringing peace to the world, aka I want to control everyone.
Do you remember?
If everybody listens to what I say, and if everybody toes the line and agrees with what I have to say, then everybody will be okay, right? So it switches up. The reason I'm playing this is because the discussion between them is very indicative of what this entire show is about, why it plays off wrong, but why the arguments are correct. If you ever wanted to have a manipulative character that plays to your weaknesses, that's what he tries to do, right? He's pretty bad at the same time that he's very good. Like, he's bad. The writers write him bad in the beginning when he tries to appeal to her sensibility, but then correctly when he actually brings actual arguments. First, he tries to tell her, you and I could be king and queen. It's very reminiscent of the temptation of Jesus in the desert. I can make you a king.
When Morgoth was defeated, it was as if a great...
So he says, like, you know what? Morgoth actually tortured me. Yes, he did. We can believe that. He did torture you.
blast.
I felt the light of the one again. Why are we suddenly trying to pretend that Iluvatar is a main factor? We have given the audience no reference point for Iluvatar or the belief systems of this world. At least in Game of Thrones, we get an understanding of the Valyrian gods, the seven, and then later they speak of the one, the fire, whatever that was. I forget now. But we don't get that in this show, and yet they just drop this, like, the one. What are you talking about? He tortured me, and now I want to heal everything that I helped ruin. Okay.
That I had helped ruin.
No penance could ever erase the evil you have done.
That is not what you believe.
Do not tell me what I believe.
No.
He makes a good point, right? Remember, he's the one that was honest with her. Again, all his arguments are accurate. He made the argument to her that I was a bad person in my past life. I was a bad person, and I don't think I can make amends for it. She's the one that told him, no, you can. The past is in the past, and you can be a good person now. You can make amends for what you can do, which I agree with. But now she's saying, no, now that I know you're Sauron, you can't possibly do good. And he's like, you told me I could.
You told me, after our victory, you said that whatever I'd done before, I could be free of it
You
now.
deceived me.
I told you the truth. I told you that I had done evil and you did not care.
I told you I was evil and you did not care. He's right. He's 100% right.
Because you knew that our past meant nothing. Weighed against our future.
I mean, he's right. He's 100% correct. The one that deceived anyone here was Galadriel.
There is no such future.
And this really starts to degenerate into a squabble between, like, a husband and wife towards the end. Like, it's really bad. But the beginning is good.
I alone can see your greatness.
And now he's going back to playing the Lucifer temptation by saying, I'm the one that can see how amazing you are, which is kind of true. The elves have not appreciated her. Not that we do, but let's say from her standpoint, nobody appreciates Galadriel but this guy, right?
I alone can see your light.
I can see your light.
You would make me a tyrant.
You would make me a tyrant. At what point in time did you not know you already are one, Galadriel? What happened to your self-awareness? Why such irony? You know?
Exactly.
Oh my
You have
God.
been a tyrant this whole
I
time.
would make you a queen.
I don't
Fair
get
as
where
the
her
sea and the sun.
self-awareness is coming from right now.
From the standpoint of the story, um, this interaction works. From the standpoint of the lore, it would never happen. She was already a princess of the Noldor. She was already royalty, as it were. Telling her that she could be the queen of what, dude?
Stronger than the foundations of the earth.
And you, my king, the Dark Lord.
No,
Remember, Barry.
not dark. Not with you at my side.
So
You told me once that we were brought together for a purpose.
again, she did say that. He is basically spitting at her everything she told him. She started this whole thing. She's at fault. From the standpoint of this story, she should bear the guilt of everything that goes bad from here on out is Galadriel's fault in this story.
This is it. You bind me to the light, and I bind you to power.
You bind me to the light and I bind you to power. Honestly, I'm not a fan of the Peter Jackson movies. I only watched the first one when it first came out, and I refused to watch the other two movies until, I don't know, it must have been almost 10 years, and I already forgot half of it. So it never stuck with me. I never liked the depiction of the elves. They never really rang true to me to what Tolkien depicts them. And I'm a Silmarillion guy. I read the Silmarillion before I read anything else. And the Silmarillion is all about the elves and the elvish lore and the saga of the elves. So they always held a particular attraction to me. So the way he depicts them as these, I don't know, stiff caryatids, no, thank you. I would have preferred elves that smoke weed and sing all day long, and are kind of like hippies, but that have actual powers and have actual understanding and lore than I do these stiff characters that they give us.
Safe. Oru.
What are you trying to save me from? If Sauron is the evil in the world at this point in time, what can he possibly save you from? He is the problem, technically. So if I kill you right now, I don't need saving. So that part of the argument makes no sense. You know? I do want to point out something that is true, I feel, in the lore, is that Sauron and the elves do have something in common here when it comes to, again, wanting to preserve eternity. Sauron, what he does well is that he plays people's weaknesses against them. He plays their hubris and their pride against them. The elves are so obsessed with maintaining the immortality of the world. The Númenóreans are obsessed with preserving their own immortality, and Sauron uses it against them so that they do exactly what he wanted them to do. So in that respect, the elves are just as much responsible for all the drama, just like in the First Age, actually. They were responsible for the drama of the First Age through their oath to retrieve the Silmarils at any cost. In the Second Age, by forging the rings to preserve eternity at any cost. And every time the elves do this, they just make things worse. So one could make an argument that the elves are just as bad as the evil elements in the world. And I want to go back to the fact that the elves represent the elite, the concept of the elitist, and therefore it makes sense that they would. He tells her his MO exactly. Find what they want and give them a way to accomplish it. Yes! Yes, good point. Yes, again. So this degenerates from here now. This conversation degenerates to a husband and wife squabble.
I see no difference.
I don't understand. Remember a minute ago, he blocked that knife without a problem. Now she's acting like I got you.
I will never be at your side.
Okay, so the difference is, do you want to do it to save Middle Earth, or do you want to do it to rule Middle Earth? Again, that's kind of connected to what I was saying, servitude versus mastery. But Galadriel is just as much guilty of mastery as Sauron in all of this. In this show. Not in the real story, in the show.
You have no choice. Without me, your people will fade, and the shadow will spread and darken.
He's right. Again, he's right? Like, according to this show, the elves are about, they're about to diminish. They're about to, go extinct. Yeah, she should have gotten along. They're about to go extinct. So he's right. They do need him. Like, dead ass, they do in this story.
To cover all the world, you need me.
I should have left you on the sea.
A sea that you were on because the elves cast you out. They cast you out for deigning to beg them for a few petty soldiers. What will they do when you tell them that you are my ally? Will you tell them that Sauron lives because of you?
And you will die because of me.
Okay, so
What is wrong with these
this feels like every...
zoom in their faces? Like, is this supposed to be intense?
This feels like a marriage. Yeah, it feels like a marriage gone bad before the wedding. That's what it feels like. We've had no progress in the rings being made. And now
Totally.
and now suddenly the rings are made in a second. Elrond finds her by the river. I guess Sauron left her to drown, but he didn't actually drown her. Doesn't make sense. She yelled at him and he just walked away and left forever. The argument in the dream was Halbrand / Sauron's argument in the dream to her was, you should let the rings happen because they will bring peace. That should make you not want the rings to happen, right? But instead, her contribution to the argument is, okay, let's make 3 rings. And then let's see what they say about that. Let's get to that part. If we can get to it, you guys gonna take?
Do we proceed?
Why does Galadriel suddenly become the one they have to ask this question about? How is she the defining decision, according to everything that's been going on? All of a sudden, they're like, can you tell us
They don't
what to
care
do?
about her technically, right?
Tell us what to do.
They don't even care about her.
Tell us what to do, all wise and masterful one.
No. We must make 3.
3? Why 3?
One will always corrupt. 2 will divide.
But with 3 there is balance.
I don't know where this came from. There was never. I mean, 3 is an esoteric number. It's a perfect number. It's a prime number. It's always used in all kinds of writing and esoteric understandings. But there was never anything about 1 is going to corrupt, 2 is going to divide, 3 is going to bring balance. I mean, I don't hate.
I think they just throw it in there exactly because it's
Caesar Pompey. Caesar Pompey and Cassius. Yes.
Number. They thought they did something.
I love the Roman analogy. I love ancient Rome, and I love that analogy. Exactly. The triumvirate did not work out for Rome. So foreshadowing maybe, but nonetheless, her contribution is, my whole point is her reaction to what she just
didn't. Oh my God.
Her reaction to just what she just went through should be, oh, we should not make the rings at all because that's what Sauron wants. No, she's like, no, let's make the rings, but we're gonna make 3 because I want 1. That's really what it sounds like. I want a ring too. So she basically is doing what Sauron wanted her to do in the first place, according to the story. This is what Tolkien criticized in the first place, was this conception, and it's not part of her character.
He's taking that power because he is a strong woman.
And suddenly, homeboy Celebrimbor tells us that he needs gold and silver from Valinor. Why? Why?
I need gold and silver of the most exquisite quality.
Why? All of a sudden, as an afterthought, you decided this, and that it has to come from Valinor? Oh, because she needs to give up the dagger. I didn't even make that connection. The dagger comes
Gold
from...
and silver from Valinor.
Her dagger comes from Valinor, and it represents her brother. So if she wants to give up, if she wants to make that ring for herself, she has to give up the dagger that represents her brother. Do you like that? It's like, forget my brother, I just want a ring.
True creation requires
So dumb.
sacrifice.
We
Okay.
don't even literally care.
Can we talk about the music being way too much? At the start of the show, she's in a dress. Then she takes the phallic object from her brother. Then she's in armor with no gauntlets or pauldrons. Maybe she'll be the real Galadriel now. I don't know. I also wanted to comment that I do like the green costuming and all of this, but green makes me think of the Mirkwood elves that are technically Teleri. The Noldor, I would think, would be more in silver. They would not be dressed in green, but whatever. Nobody cares. We go back to the boring ass Harfoots, in case everybody was worried about it. And I'm a sucker for father-daughter moments. So I did like the father-daughter moment here.
He needs you. And you belong out there.
Suddenly, everybody that told her she was worth nothing, remember, now they do a 180 like they continuously do on the show, and they say, oh yeah, no, you're special. We were just telling you you weren't because, yeah, reasons. It's fun to make you feel like a piece of crap. But you know what? We kind of want you to move on. It's time for you to leave the house. You found a man. Again, the sense of wonder and innocence that children bring to the world is really the only thing worth preserving. And Tolkien kind of gave us that with the hobbits. They were meant to kind of symbolize that element in humanity. At least the four, and maybe not the other hobbits, were kind of jerks too. But with Bilbo and Frodo and Sam and Pippin, and I always forget the other guy, you get a sense of that it's your companionship that matters. It's having a sense of wonder and innocence in the world. That's worth preserving. If you don't have that, there's really nothing worth fighting for, because in the end, everything else that everybody's doing, the elves, Sauron, the dwarves, everybody's trying to do their own thing out of greed, out of hubris, out of pride, and none of it lasts. None of it has a lasting effect. But the things that we can fight for are the things that make us human. But apart from Nori, I don't see it in any other character in the show. They have a cute little daddy-daughter moment that, you know, it kind of made me angry because I realized that this show is trying to subvert that message. Yeah, they give it to us here with these two, but in general, they're subverting the message, right? In no other part of this show do we get the sense of what's really important and what you should really be fighting for in life. And it really makes me angry. It makes when I first saw it, I got really pissed off, because this is what the show should be about. This right here.
And earth. Don't
You know?
squash by a river, never know when you need a drink downstream. And a Harfoot without manners is as light yet far in life as a square.
I mean, whatever. What he said is stupid and it's silly, and it's pretty bad as it is. But it's the moment between these two characters and these two actors.
Like they're capable of doing it, they just decided not to. just reasons.
Well, and I'm saying they did it on purpose. I'm saying that their whole point, and we're seeing it with Sauron, is to subvert on its head pretty much everything that Tolkien was building on, which is why I want to read The New Shadow, which I started working on, because the New Shadow reveals the fact that Tolkien saw this coming, that he saw that the generations coming ahead were going to subvert and pervert what he was trying to share with the world through the effort of what he wrote. Despite the fact that I still believe, again, that it's still based on the Necronomicon and these elitist views about a divine race coming to Earth and seeding civilization and granting humanity everything that is worth anything. But that's not what matters, does it? What matters is this right here. What matters is the relationships that we have with each other, not the fact that we have a ring of power or a ability to create an iPhone or a Tesla or sail into space. If this isn't preserved, there literally is no value to any of it. And that is subverted in the show for the most part.
Well, then, perhaps it would be best if you lead off.
Right. Perhaps it would be best if the Harfoot that knows nothing tells me where to go, even though we know where I have to go. And then she says, well, I don't know where we should go. What do you mean? We know we need to go to Rune. So, okay, we only needed this much mithril, by the way, because in the end, they couldn't convince the dwarves. If I don't like, which you might not have caught all these callback lines, but follow your nose. Is it really? Oh, follow your nose. Was that in Fellowship? I don't remember. I vaguely remember that moment. However, it's pretty damn lame. And if they're trying to use that member berry to suggest that it is Gandalf,
I have no idea.
there's absolutely no weight. There's nothing to back up why Gandalf would go to the east. We know that Gandalf stayed in Eriador for the most part. He wandered Middle Earth. He did not wander into the Eastlands or the Southlands. He did not go to Horad or Rune. Well, we can't say that with certainty, but there's no real reason for him to go that direction. Are they? That's pretty lame. I don't feel free to point them out because that's just funny to me. I will say at least the Peter Jackson movies tried to evoke the books. They tried to stay true to the main storyline. I'll give them that much. But I didn't care for the more thematic and the dressings of it. So I'm not going to be very keen on those moments as far as when they do it. But the fact that they do it, I would be insulted if I was Peter Jackson, because I'd be like, I don't want to, do not involve me in your shit. I don't want to have anything to do with it. Apparently the contrivances in the story are really annoying, because they tried to, the last episode was all about, are we going to get mithril? Are we not going to get mithril? Do we need more mithril? Do we not need enough? We're going to go off this little tiny piece of mithril we're supposed to believe has so much power in it that just this tiny little bit of mithril is enough to forge the 3 rings and give them their power. Could you imagine if they mined the entire cave of mithril then? Like, it just doesn't make any sense that this would be enough. But it is enough, right? Because they say it is. So he drops it in. Okay. That's also kind of evocative of the movies, right? The whole ring motif. It looks like the Eye of Sauron is going to open up. I don't know why. Can we say Celebrimbor is an idiot in the show? So I was thinking like this is it's gonna go from the middle pot into three circular pots and make the rings, but no, instead, I mean, and I don't know anything. I don't know. It goes into this vessel, and then they break the vessel, and instead of having a ring, you have a little block of gold and silver that they then manipulate into rings. I don't know if that's how it's really done. So I can't speak on this, but what I can speak on is the fact that the elves that are working on this look extremely bored. Check it out. These people do not look like they are working on the most amazing talismans and creations of the elves in the Second Age. They look like they are just showed up to work 9 to 5 and they just can't wait to get home for the day. I don't know if it's me, but that's what I felt like. Anyway, I already got told.
Yeah, exactly. They look like they're underpaid extras, honestly.
Right? That's what they look like. And I already told you guys that the whole concept of the rings here, getting their power from Mithril is baloney. It would have come from the inherent energy of the creators. Celebrimbor is the son of Curufin, son of Feanor, for a reason, not because it was just a nice contrivance. Tolkien wanted to make him a direct line from Feanor for a reason, because Feanor crafted the Silmarils, and again, these are crafted, and the Silmarils were crafted from the light of the trees Telperion and Laurelin. So, if anything, we can say the light of the trees is more important than the Mithril itself. But this is the way they decided to go with it. We're supposed to believe that some inanimate material called Mithril is going to give the rings their power, and of course save elvendom. Okay, so all of a sudden,
lame, honestly.
all of a sudden, Elrond is a private investigator. As if he has reason to doubt Galadriel, he goes back to where he found her almost drowning and then finds the scroll that she had that basically says that Halbrand is not, a king of the men. So he must be Sauron. Now, here's my thing. Why would the elves give a damn and get upset at Galadriel at this fact? Galadriel did not at any point in time help Sauron knowing it was Sauron. She didn't know. I mean, I hate to defend her in this, but I got to defend her in this respect. Like, she didn't know that Halbrand was Sauron when she was helping him. So them finding or discovering this fact, or that Elrond is discovering this fact, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't make her any more guilty, and it doesn't make her any more bad.
Her at this point,
I know.
Pointing out plot hole.
Yeah, it doesn't. And then, but that's what they're obviously. I mean, that's what that scene must be for. I don't know what other reason they would bring it up. I guess this is to sow suspicion between Elrond and her, like the way that Alicent no longer trusts Rhaenyra. Now Elrond is Alicent and Galadriel is Rhaenyra, and he's not going to trust her because she wasn't upfront about this Halbrand being Sauron. And it's like, that's stupid, dude. That's just dumb. Okay, it's not her fault. You know what? I don't even remember the Peter Jackson rings, but I will probably pull them up next time, because I don't even remember them. But I'm sure these are inferior in look, at least. I don't know. You think with $1 billion budget they wouldn't be. They bring us back the freaking eye motif. If you haven't realized it, that it's a satanic thing. It's on the It's on the top of the pyramid. It's meant to reflect that pyramidal structure of power and of control that is satanic, and that Sauron and Morgoth are meant to represent, but that clearly both the people that created this and maybe even Hollywood are in league with, but they do bring it up. In case you were doubtful, oh, the all-seeing eye sees us. We cut to Sauron. Now we know it's Sauron looking at Mount Doom. This is meant to be significant because we know that the whole point of Mount Doom is that he's going to go forge.
So lame, honestly.
He's going to forge the One Ring in Mount Doom. Again, he doesn't have Mithril, so what is he going to do? Like, how are they going to give us the sense that the ring he's going to forge in Mount Doom is going to be the one to rule them all? If so far they're telling us Mithril is necessary to make them even powerful, I don't know. Wait till next season if we even want to give a damn at this point. But that's what this is about. He's going to Mount Doom. He's going to make the ring to rule them all.
Do you think they'll even make it next season? Was it confirmed?
Yeah, they're shooting it now. Apparently, they're shooting the season this. They started shooting it this month, but we're not going to see it till a year and a half from now. Here's the thing that annoyed me about this, right? Like, did he know Adar was going to release the freaking water that was going to make Mount Doom erupt? Like, are we supposed to believe he's a mastermind? That he somehow thought of all of this and he knew how everything was going to play out? I don't. Yeah, Team Adar. I don't know. I never got a sense of that. Did you? That grin, that shit-eating grin he has on makes it look like, yeah, I knew this was going to happen all along. I don't know. It just sounds like you're lucky, dude. Like, you lucked out that you ran into Galadriel. You lucked out that Adar it made the Mount Doom erupt for you. How convenient. It would have been really interesting if the whole thing just happened in Galadriel's head, in my opinion. I think that is interesting. An interesting take on it. But it's not consistent with the writing and how these people have been putting this together, because they just do. I've decided that from a writing perspective, these people are doing it on purpose, and I will tell you why. C.S. Lewis wrote in That Hideous Strength. There's an important moment in That Hideous Strength where the professor, he's a young professor at a university in England, and he's very obsessed with joining the inner circle, right? So talking again about these elitist satanic people. He wants to join the inner circle, and when he finally joins the inner circle, they take him into a room where there's all this type of art, and he basically talks about, and I'm gonna have to get the book and I'm gonna have to read it because it's been a long time. It's been years since I read it. But basically, that the way that the elitists remold your thinking is by giving you dystopian, nonsensical elements in art that force your mind to not work logically anymore and not work in conjunction to what nature is. And I think that that's what these guys are doing with the story. That when they do these 180s on characters, when they bring in these nonsensical elements that you would think would be like, are you dumb? I think they're doing it on purpose, because to the average mind, it would lead them down a path of nonsensical thinking and disassociation, which is what they want. It's a theory, but I'm basing it off how That Hideous Strength exposes how these people use art in general to force people to think in a certain way There's no way you run into someone you happen to be looking for shipwrecked on the open ocean. No way. Cool. I would want to hear more about that because that should be useful in terms of talking about the Numenorians who were supposed to be sailors. But I think they're doing this on purpose. I think the dystopian elements in the writing is actually not because they're stupid. Not at all. I think they're being directed to do so because someone who isn't attentive to those facts, especially younger people, especially people that are going to eat it wholesale and start thinking that it's okay for a character to do a 180. It does something to your mind that it disassociates you with reality from reality in such a way that you become susceptible to anything, which I think is what we see in politics as well nowadays. But I don't care for the singing. I do like that Sauron would have befriended an elf. In terms of the trying to give them too much credit, but what? The Matrix movie? In what sense is it like the Matrix movie? That's a good point. The Matrix movies, I always admired the fact that they reveal the fact that we are living in a video game. You could say we are living in a video game, that this is not a reality. What is reality? The Matrix movie is just exposes that theme, which already existed in writings before even Tolkien. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis both read the writings of George MacDonald, and George MacDonald already played with that in his writings, Phantastes and Lilith, which I was fortunate to read Lilith at least. I don't have Phantastes, but I do think that if Sauron was going to return to Middle Earth, as we know he does in the Second Age, he would befriend an elf. That it would be Galadriel doesn't make necessarily sense, but I do think that I mean, I'll give them credit where it's due there. And I already mentioned that I've personally failed to make that connection between Halbrand and Sauron because I'm actually trying to follow the lore. And I got blinded by wanting to pretend that this show even had any respect for it in any sense, that I saw the clear signs that everybody else did. Nonetheless, it doesn't matter. I shouldn't have taken the show seriously to begin with. The agenda to subvert Sauron's role is the biggest takeaway with this series. He's clearly being turned into the anti-hero. Everything that Tolkien, all the values that Tolkien meant to represent, do not apply in the show because the show is trying to make the world of Middle Earth fit into or reflect our modern world. And that just wouldn't be the case. It's not compatible. Everything in Middle Earth is meant to reflect something in values that are at this point laughed at. And that's why I want to read The New Shadow, because in The New Shadow, Tolkien hints at that. He hints at he doesn't even hint at it. It really comes straight out. Sauron should be archetypal and not a human with motivations we can relate. Yes. And that was done on purpose, right? Because if you make him a human person that we can relate to, now we want to root for Sauron, right? Sauron had logical rebuttals to everything that was brought up against him by Galadriel. In the arguments, he was right from a logical standpoint and from an emotional standpoint. But at the same time, he reveals his own neuroticism, right? When he doesn't get his way, he's just as bad as Galadriel.
I'm rooting for Sauron. I'm definitely rooting for evil. I shouldn't, but I think it's how the series was made in the first place.
Which is the whole motivation of modern, Hollywood filmmaking, is that there's no right and wrong. There's no more ethics or morality. So you can pick a side depending on how you feel about it. And there's something very dangerous with that, that it doesn't start to really reveal itself until we start dealing with little children, which is what we're dealing with now in reality. I don't know if they're going to bring it into the stories, but we're dealing with it in reality, where you can say that my truth is my truth and your truth is your truth until our faces turn red. But when you're dealing with children, now you're really reaching the epitome of understanding of how that logic is being perverted and twisted for an evil means. And like, again, until we get to the point that Sauron doesn't get his way, then we see that he's just like Galadriel. So there really are no different. They're just as whether you root for Sauron or you root for Galadriel in this story, you're rooting for two people that are belligerent and want to have their way of things. You're not rooting for people that are trying to uphold a sense of ethics and a sense of morality to preserve that innocence that I was telling you that I feel that at least Nori kind of represents, which I'm sure she'll be stripped of it in some point. That was the whole point and the whole motif, the whole thematic strength of the original Tolkien writings, and it's being subverted. So it's sad. In the New Shadow, he really reveals it for what it is. And I felt that he felt that he needed to expose that, because he started seeing it with the popularity of Lord of the Rings. He started to already see that in people. And he wanted to express it, but the moment he started expressing it, he got so depressed, because when you're dealing with evil in an external sense, where you can say that it's Sauron, or you can say that it's Morgoth and it's the orcs, it's easy to say, well, we got to defeat them, we got to fight that evil. But when that evil is coming from within, when that evil can be your own son or your own grandson, now we're really dealing with something that's a lot more complicated, and which is the problem that we're having in the West. That evil lies within. That evil is not coming from outside. It is not some invasion of some outside force. It is not Russia invading the West. It's infiltrated. It's corrupting those within our culture and within our society, that we are being therefore corrupted and being undermined, and our values are being undermined, and we feel helpless. And that's the way Tolkien felt when he started really delving into it in the New Shadow. And that's why he couldn't finish it, because he didn't know the answer. How do you fight that? When you have Sauron and you have Morgoth and you have Mordor, and that fight is external, and it's very clear who's on what side, it becomes very clear what the sacrifices are, which is what he comes from World War I and World War II, where those lines were delineated very clearly to that time. Fascism was fascism. We understood that was the evil working in the world. It was very clear, Hitler and Stalin and all of that. But now you're not dealing with that. Now you're dealing with your own politicians. Your own people from within are undermining your values and are disarming you of everything that you installed from through your democratic values and through your constitutions. None of that matters when the people that are in charge can change it at whim, can do a 180 the way characters do 180s here, right? 1 second it's this way, now it's going to be that way. Why? Because I changed my mind, because it doesn't suit my agenda at this point in time, right? It's not as clear how you fight that. It's not as clear what is it going to take, because the stakes are much higher. And so Tolkien wasn't able really to address it, and I think that's why he quit on the book. But the book, at least, or the story, the short story, it's only like 12 pages long. The short story at least addresses it. It exposes it. It brings it to the surface so that we can talk about it. And that's why I want to do the New Shadow. I'll do the New Shadow next. But yeah, as you can tell, there was a lot in the finale. we're probably not going to see anything for another year and a half, but there's plenty of content. There's also a story. They want people to think only in terms of power positions.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was a lot. Sorry I didn't talk a lot. I was listening. Everything was so interesting.
Yeah, no, yeah,
I had so much to say.
yeah, there really isn't. Yeah, I mean, I did a lot of analysis and while I was watching it. I mean, honestly, it was very boring to watch. I gave you the highlights. Corey says they want people to think only in terms of power positions with an amoral relativism otherwise. Then they can get anyone to do anything. Yes, convincing them they're fighting power oppression, just
Yeah,
power.
thank you.
Yeah, correct. And so the whole point of the concept of the dark ember is getting away from all of those old, because when everything that you believe in is manipulated to mean whatever they want it to mean, so that you can't even speak. We don't even speak the same language. You've got to get back to the core of the essence of what you stand for. And what you should stand for is the dark ember, and the dark ember is really that kernel of who you are, stripped of morality, stripped of society, stripped of ethics and everything that they tell you to do, and going back to the core of your own spirituality and the core of your own essence. Whether that essence is that you're a serial killer or that essence is that you're a good person, quote unquote, a good person, the bottom.
Poor guy. I wouldn't want this to be dedicated to me.
Right?
Too bad.
Yeah, I agree. Who wants this? Who wants this dedicated to them? Leave me out of it. So, how did this show provoke you to talk about the Matrix? Is it because you're saying that there's the same themes, the same messages are being relayed in both, and this one reminded you of the Matrix, or is the Matrix go more? Does the Matrix evoke more of these issues than Rings of Power in that respect? I'm not sure. I think it's worth to do it. Oh yes, which comes from C.S. Lewis, That Hideous Strength, which we should also review. Art is definitely used to subvert values. It's the most powerful way to do it, especially for young people, because they don't have any context by which to judge and be critical. You know, they ingest everything through their eyes and through their senses, and especially from a young age up until, at least their mid-20s to late 20s, everything that they have no experience by which to judge things, and everything they absorb everything that they comes up against them. That's why the attack now, if you realize it, is on children, is on really young kids. They're trying to get them younger and younger at this point, so they can totally sever them from their own parents. That's what's happening. Especially in the Anglophone countries, more than all of Western Europe too, but really mostly in the Anglophone countries. It feels like the other countries, I don't want to say they're insulated, but they still hold on a little bit to the old traditional values of family and the importance of family. And I think we have it in America too. I see it when I go out to the countryside where they make fun of those people because they're so uncultured and everything. And yeah, that may be a factor, but what saves them is the fact that because they're kind of more isolated, even though with the internet and everything, everyone's connected to everyone, they do hold to their values of family more strongly. And that's why they're also being assaulted.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a lot of family, really, but because they're so isolated, they certainly have a certain different approach to family and traditions, they don't feel like they need to subvert them as much
Yeah.
because they feel okay in it. It's the thing of you, if you don't know any better, quote unquote better, you are not gonna look for it.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
And it's the sense of it's being instilled into us
my point is that
from other people.
my point is that when Tolkien finished writing the Lord of the Rings and that whole set of that whole epic, and he came up with writing he came up against writing The New Shadow, is because he realized that, he saw that, and he had, again, he acknowledged and identified the fact that the evil was the same evil that he was talking about with Sauron and Morgoth, is the same evil that we are dealing with now, but that rather than it being an external thing, it became now something from within. Which kind of, the show kind of shows that with Halbrand being in the midst of them, but I think, again, at the same time, it tries to subvert the image of Sauron as someone that is someone you can relate to, someone that is just misunderstood. But even though he identified that problem, he didn't have a solution for it, because it is very daunting. It's initially very daunting if you don't go back to the roots of the Son of Man story. And again, the concept of the dark ember as relates to the Son of Man, which is to remain true to your own nature, but in service to something that is greater than yourself, and that will guide you, even if you're I do believe that if Sauron aside from the story point aspect of the show, Halbrand, if he did commit those atrocities, the fact that he was able to either be that evil or be in contact with that level of evil does make him understand evil, and then make him be able to use that in service to something else. We see it in Gomorrah with Cheeto, and we see it in I forgot now. We see it in if you ever watched I'm forgetting the name, Dexter, where Dexter has serial killer tendencies, and he has this dark follower, he calls him, but he channels it to do something good, right? He channels his inner dark tendency to want to kill and torture something. He channels it to catch other serial killers. I think that was the most fascinating thing for me of that show. And that's the concept of the dark ember, and I think that's what
it was really interesting, because you're actually putting something that is traditionally considered bad, you're actually putting it on for something productive and good.
Yes, that's the whole point. The point is that instead of denying something that is integral to your nature, in the case of Dexter, he had a traumatic experience as a Jungian integrating the shadow. Yeah, I mean, you can add more to that, your own perspective on that. But what I'm saying is that Dexter had a traumatic experience as a child that changed him forever into what he was, which became basically having murderous tendencies. And he can either deny that and become a problem in society, or, interestingly enough, his father, being a cop, sees that, accepts it, and says, look, let's find a way for you to channel that into something. And he gave him a code to live by. That is the purpose of having discipline, which is what the Son of Man meant to teach. It wasn't meant to be so much a religion, because religion, again, is also about controlling people, mastery over people. But it's about controlling, managing yourself, and identifying how those cravings and those needs in yourself that society might not accept or might not.
It's more spirituality.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to throw the word spirituality around, but it is. The true spirituality is finding discipline in yourself to channel those things about yourself that society hasn't found a value for. For example, like in medieval times, let's say, I mean, I'm just gonna make something up. Um, someone like someone like someone like someone like Dexter could have been an executioner. You know, he chops people's heads off, and that's his job. And that medieval era gave that tendency to be a murderer a role in society. When you think about the Matrix, the agents oppressed people upholding the system, but they didn't try to kill them. And the resistance response was deadly to many inside, dehumanized copper tops. Yeah, yeah. I think it's worth reviewing it. I think we could do a review of the Matrix. It's been a while, and so I think the answer to how you fight that evil today is through the Dark Ember and through people experiencing this evil and drawing the line in the sand. And that's the problem. As long as you have something to lose, uh, you don't have a dog in the fight. It's not possible. You have to lose everything. Sadly, it's what I constantly see is a theme and a reality in life, right? Where as long as we don't want to lose our pension, we don't want to lose our homes, we don't want to lose our income, we don't want to lose our friendships, we don't want to lose possibly our own family connections. We don't stand up for what we see as evil for what it is, which is the whole point of even writing Lord of the Rings in the first place. You're talking about the first one, or are you talking about the whole trilogy and how it played out throughout the whole trilogy? Because I always felt like the first Matrix movie kind of was a standalone, and then they just kind of threw in the other two to make it into a trilogy. And I kind of, even though I watched them at the time, I kind of fell off after the first one in terms of really following it. Always a pleasure. Thank you very much. It's always fun to see the reactions. It helps me revisit and rethink some of those things, especially the Peter Jackson analogies. I appreciate those. And yeah,